we have a treat is that Rod Smith from IBM, IBM's Emerging Technologies Group, playfully known as ET. Very cool, right? The Emerging Technologies Group at IBM is a little bit different than other groups. I've been part of offices of the CTO and offices that are looking at next generation technologies, and usually we're just focused on the technology, and if somebody could put it to use, that would have been great. But Rod tells me that one of the things that they're very, very focused on is to make sure that they're speaking to customers and then applying those technologies directly associated with what the customer is going to find useful, which I think is probably a good idea. So as you look at what Rod is about to present, what's going to be neat is it's not just a quick PowerPoint presentation, although we're going to have a good amount of discussion around where the cloud is, where it's going, especially in big data. But more importantly, he's got a great group of guys here who are going to actually give us more of a showcase on the keynote. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So Rod is, as I mentioned, a VP of Emerging Technologies at IBM, and he's also an IBM fellow, which just basically means he's a smarty pants, right? All right, so he's focused on leading a group of innovators, and so not only have to be smart yourself, but then everybody around you is probably smarter than Rod, so that's even harder for him to manage. And leading these group of innovators that are going on all kinds of different directions, as I mentioned, is kind of tough, and so that's the job that Rod's undertaken here. And so he's been an early advocate for things like Java Enterprise Edition, XML, and a lot of the core technologies that go into building what we see on the internet today. So his job is to look out into the future, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and try to figure out what everybody will be using in the future, but do so in a way today so that IBM and other industry players can use that knowledge to give users hopefully actionable, valuable advice and, of course, products and solutions as well. So basically, he likes to say that they live what they do, and that's really great. Is that they have to actually use the technologies that they're putting into use at the customer site. So I'd like to welcome Rod, and then he'll bring up all the other team members as well that will give us a good showcase of. Thank you very much.
So what I thought I would do, I listened as Richard talked yesterday on Duke kind of standing it up, and so I can tell you a little bit more about what we do. Part of what's changing from kind of a line of business and IT standpoint, which I think sets a context for why people are interested in Duke and other technologies. And solutions, as we talked about, sometimes people keep asking me, is this stuff real yet? And especially on analytics, we'll give you lots of examples that, and very broad examples of where people are using big data analytics and where that's going to be driving in terms of cloud applications in the future. We also like to do live code. And since we're developers, we like to stand things up and show you what we're working on and get your feedback on it as we will. And some things I heard yesterday on too, lessons learned and try to learn questions. As you heard, we're kind of an innovation group inside IBM. Some people call us an internal startup. So we get very interested in talking with customers, business customers as yourselves. And we don't talk about technology. What customers talk to us about is, gee, what problems they foresee in the next few years that they don't see addressed by vendors like IBM or Oracle or Microsoft. And many times it's one of those that we collect stories, and after these stories start to take some form, we're able to look for changes in technology. Sometimes you have some economic transformation that might change the game for them on this. And so, technologies we've worked on over the years have kind of led us into different directions. We did SOA, which led us to 2.0, and what people want to do from a client technology around AJAX, RIA types of things, and that led us into mashups, and that led us into big data. So it's interesting when we can show people what's the art of the possible, then it kind of transforms itself into other things that they're looking at doing down the road. Cloud's been coming up for probably 3 or 4 years now, especially with the line of business people. So the big areas that are kind of competency areas for my team are cloud application composition, which you'll see more of, kind of systems of engagement. As social business, as we see these types of applications coming up, it's how do people look at Twitter, look at social information, other information that's available on the internet, and be able to provide more value to their businesses, and especially mobile, more and more on the mobile side of what people want to do with their applications on this. As the introduction started, I have two parts to my team. We're a small team, we're 50, 60 people. One part of it is technologists, so we do spend a lot of time on the code, building things, but the other part's the JSTART team who has a booth set up over here. And so as we do things, we do go work with customers. So we kind of are this voice of the customer. Let's go out while our technology is plenty in cookie dough form and test the value proposition. Go do POCs with customers, come back, iterate on it. And also when we do that, customers will tell us we like what you're doing, we don't, or there's certain parts of this we think should be standards or open sourced, or they give us a lot of criteria as we go through and look at it from evolving it. And this is the JSTART page, which we can show you. This is a lot of the work we do. We make sure is put out there in patterns form, business form, so people can see a lot of the projects that we're doing. I thought we'd start, and part of what I like about cloud computing is the kind of these computing waves we've seen over time. Probably not many people in this room go back to mainframe days, but I do. And so you kind of look at not only what mainframes did from an opportunity standpoint, but kind of the last column over, kind of the unintended consequences. What drove these new waves? So client server, it was really a backlog of applications, and again, really aimed at line of business type of things, where you could see things like Visual Basic and others be able to improve the time to use data, to use applications to build things. The problem with that was it created what we call these islands of automation. IT's costs went through the roof because you had lots of these client server applications that didn't scale very well. So pressure points, internet comes along. And so I didn't list them all, but I think the part towards the bottom is we've seen big data analytics come in, and as as Richard talked yesterday about Hadoop, NLP technology, machine learning, and others have been able to lower the cost of kind of actionable insights. How can I use analytics to be able to do those types of applications? But it still was in kind of the IT shop. And so cloud starts to come up where people want more flexibility. They want to be more opportunistic about using data, using services. And so we're seeing another generation of operating technology come up. Again, really driven by what we can do from a line of business or born on the web type of companies. This was out of a conference recently, and I liked the chart or the graphic in particular because it seemed like cloud initially was about TCO. Let's move everything to the cloud and we'll get better TCO. Now we're hearing a lot more kind of pragmatics about it. TCO is important from a buyer, but it's not the first thing. It's really this time to value, building applications, composing them, and seeing how they can get to this time to value piece very quickly on it. TCO is important, but it's down the list from the buyers versus the sellers. And so you're now seeing kind of a pragmatic approach where if I've got workloads, very stable workloads, transactional workloads, probably not going to move them to the cloud and see much value in that from reducing costs. Kind of my other point of lumpy workloads, ones that spark up and come back down again, that makes a difference. So those might be something that more apply to the cloud, but they're more applied to business applications too. So what we're seeing from customers from a line of business perspective is these new applications that are a lot more, let me experiment in the marketplace. I want to build something, kind of measure if it's helping my business. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'll learn a bit more from it, and then I'll repeat that process. And that's not a normal IT application. It's not how you price out or even go talk to IT about it. But more and more, that's where people are using data in particular about having hunches and wanting to play out those hunches. The other part is that you talk to line of business, they're kind of skeptical from an IT perspective when they look at these highly integrated services, which IT does because that's one of the heavy costs that they've got. But they don't know what they're paying for. You know, they don't know how much it costs them to do this. If they had to manage that into their business, what would it mean to them? So more and more as they look at computing services, they want kind of ROI transparency. How much is it, you know, how much am I buying and how much is the benefit to me for doing that? The one on the right is what we're hearing from customers today, especially the line of business people, is they want solutions very quickly. You know, 6 days is a quote from a customer. And if you look, we're probably in the phase of doing things with cloud technology in, you know, months. But from a competitive advantage standpoint, they believe that's got to be shortened dramatically. And so, you know, less than a week to be able to do this. This systems of engagement, Geoffrey Moore's article a couple of years back has really been kind of a catalyst. There's kind of these new applications, social business and others, where you want to drive continuous business value. You want to engage your customers, you want to learn from them about your products and services, and you want a continuous feedback loop. And you know, you do that through really metrics is this measure part of it, being able to see how you can do development, DevOps pieces of it, analyze the information quickly, and then be able to set new business goals, adjust your business goals quickly. So you see this kind of separation of systems of engagement, systems of record. They move at very different paces for the right reasons. You know, updating schemas for master data management system is no task to take lightly. It takes months and reviews and testing. Where in this, it's a discovery piece. How do I find out and what's changing in the next, you know, few hours with my customers that I can learn from? So then switch to the IT shop. And if you look at IT, and you know, I get to talk to both, so this is what's fun. Line of business sits down and says, here's the kind of applications they want. And then I go visit the IT side of the shop, and they have kind of a negative attitude on this. You know, gee, here we are again, client server all over again, departmental systems coming up that are doing Hadoop, that are doing other things. They don't have any idea what's going on. Line of businesses go outside, hire development shops to build these applications. You know, social, big data, kind of mobile are driving this right now, though that'll grow. Of course, they're not, you know, they're unencumbered. They can go off on a clean slate and do this. And, you know, line of business can look at that value proposition and say, this is something that can be impactful for me, drive my bottom line better or not. But IT really doesn't see it until the line of business comes in to engage them and say, I'd like this supported now, or I would like services internal or data internal. So you get this kind of reaction of, you know, you really don't belong here anymore. You're kind of a, you know, you don't submit our architectures or compliance or business controls, and, you know, just kind of ugly. If we'd started with us, we wouldn't have this problem today. And, you know, both sides are right. So it's not pretty as you walk through this. What's happening, though, is where cloud comes in. Now people are starting, especially IT shops, are kind of looking forward, saying maybe this is a way that instead of trying to corral line of business, how do we empower them some more? How do we give them ways to go build these applications that are data and analytics and mobile, experiment, be able to do it on their own, use third-party developers and others, and then, you know, really start to create a dialogue that is, you know, balancing out this business innovation versus kind of IT optimizations. And, you know, as we all know, there's only so much shops, so much money, you know, businesses have. So how do you balance where's the right place to, you know, invest your dollars when you've got these things? And so these types of applications where they're more service-oriented are coming about. So if you will, going forward into new generations. And cloud is a way that, if you will, IT can say, well, here's a place that you can work. And then there's ways that you can integrate back into the business accordingly. So we're seeing kind of the forward-thinking IT shops look at how they're taking their current systems and turning them into services. How do I expose those as, you know, under CRM, some services that the line of business will want to use at that point? Loosely coupled integration. Very important point on this. So there's this whole discussion of API economy. how people are looking at utilizing services either in a business or through third parties to be able to expand what they're doing, but also gives IT a way of talking to a line of business on, if you're going to use my service for CRM, then there's certain things that I'm obligated to do. And that's starting to drive a little bit around this line of kind of service plans. Companies like Heroku explored this area as they built their sites, but we've got enterprises that have done chargebacks for years. But now you're able to start, and my little picture here is, I'm going to use a CRM service, but now I really want to do log analysis. And if I'm going to buy an enterprise version, it's a little dark up there, then those are the types of entitlements I'm going to get. And for a line of business, this is good, because if they're going to test out an application to see if it has value in this kind of experimental mode, they're going to start with free versions of everything. How can I do it quickly? I don't want to spend any money on it till I know it's going to have some type of business value. Then if it does, developers go back and find some of those versions that have the right support, the right monitoring, the right compliance that I can negotiate or I can talk to from an IT perspective on it. So I think we'll see more of this coming out as we see cloud architectures grow and data grow. So as businesses say, I've got external data, I'd sure like to get the internal data. And line of businesses can offer data services that can be for online properties that businesses can use at that point in time. This also gives a nice way back to the ROI transparency. Most of the time when you see a business application and they ask IT to support it or it needs security, the IT has no idea what it really is to the business. How much business does it drive, or how much is it worth to do that? And it gets to be a real gnarly conversation in most cases. Now you start to see a dialogue, a way to have a dialogue where businesses can say, well, I need security. How much is it going to cost? And is that going to be worth the business value I'm going to achieve on it? And also helps IT decide how much of new services they're going to offer at that point. So you're seeing kind of this, if you will, kind of dynamic service composition models evolve. And it doesn't come along the right-hand side, but the workload orchestration is kind of the infrastructure as a service level, the virtualization pieces. And then the middle ones where I've got different services and composition is kind of the platform as a service level, and then SaaS applications on top of it. But the idea more and more is I've got ways I can expose things as services. How do I do that? They could be on a cloud, they can be external to a cloud, they can be from customers or third parties or my ecosystem. And how do I use that to kind of assemble applications in the future on this? By the way, from the traditional workload model, IT doesn't just have the services they're doing, they also have their existing workloads that they're supporting as well. So that takes us to data, because this is one of the big drivers of this that got us underway. This was from about a year ago, actually about 18 months ago, about how much information, social information is created. But this is a recent graphic, and you'll see that the Twitter information went from 34 million to 50 million a day. And so you'll get you see these, and what's fun about our job is you'll see the productivity increases and the sales increases that big data is driving. So real value that people can attribute to utilizing data. There's more external data that gives them that value than internal data today. And it'll grow. This will be an ebb and flow. So if you think of sensors, other types of things from an internal standpoint, then this model will change over time. But it's only good enough if I can use it within the right context for applications. And that's something that probably doesn't come out very often. Big data is nice, but it's only good when I can find the right context that it's applicable in, which drives analytics from a different standpoint. So it's not analytics in the BI sense of let's develop a model that'll work across a broad range of applicability. It's customized analytics that really work in very, very specific scenarios. So I thought I'd give you some of these. And this is one 2 weeks ago at Impact. We had a VP from Ford Motors coming and talked about that, your car is now a data center. The Ford Focus, whether you catch your breath on this or not, 16 million lines of code. If you're a technologist, this is really good. If you're someone who doesn't like technology, this should worry you. 70 microprocessors in it, huge amounts of data being generated. But it's not just in the car. If you think of Ford from a manufacturer, all their equipment, from CAD through tooling through everything, is IP enabled. When they decide to collect that information, you can imagine how a business person would like to sit down and know exactly how much the pipeline's costing, where innovation's coming through, how they can do better efficiencies with it. They're not doing that today. But with all the IP equipment and all the places they can do that, this is becoming, an interesting way of thinking about data. If some of you saw the New York Times article, in January, I think, on Tesla, where there's an argument between the Times reporter and Elon Musk about his driving from DC up to New York, and it wasn't a pleasant trip. And Tesla published all the data that they had on the car for everybody to look at and kind of make their own determination whether that report was good or not. And the answer was, no, everybody had different looks at the data, but there wasn't a definitive answer, which is also true. So when you look at this, it's, the type of data you're going to be able to get in these situations is going to be very large that you can start to glean from different insights from. Medical, doubling every 5 years, and from a healthcare standpoint, it's huge in terms of how much data is there and how much really isn't absorbed in terms of being used by doctors today. So great we're having more, but how do we utilize those types of things and the amount of errors that go into the types of systems today. This was a project that my JSTAR team did with our SPSS folks with Seton Healthcare. And they gave us records. This is part of what's real. This stuff's very real. Where they had, they wanted to look at the changes in healthcare and readmissions. So they gave us 5,000 patients in healthcare around congenital heart failure and said, can you look at this data and see if there's a predictive model so we know what kind of preventive treatment we can provide folks so we can reduce those readmissions. Well, the structured data, the EMR data, didn't help us much. In fact, it didn't help us at all. And that's generally the way BI is done. It's looking at the fields of information. What we then did was look at the unstructured information, the text that the doctor would put in or the patient would put in. And some of it is humorous, where the question is, do you smoke? And someone would press the checkbox, no. And then the text, they'd say, I quit smoking 3 weeks ago. The legal time is 2 years to check that box correctly. But they don't tell you that, so I have good intentions, I quit. So looking at the data starts to give you better insights, the unstructured data. And the team utilized that with structured data to come up with these indicators which would tell you about readmissions. I won't go through them all, but number 17 was an interesting one, paid by Medicare. So our team kind of scratched their heads when they saw this, because it's, well, wait a minute, if they have health care, why is this a predictor of readmission? And maybe we got something wrong. And this is a part of this dialogue between applications and business domain experts. If it doesn't look right, let's ask some questions. Maybe we're not looking at the data correctly. And it turned out that this group that they gave us of 5,000 came from a certain area that was heavily on the poverty side and used part of their payments to buy medications and then turn around and sell them for food and gasoline and other things. So you can imagine that there's some fixes for that in terms of Seton Healthcare making sure that they drive out and give people their medications. But the bigger point is the model that was helpful for that group or that population wouldn't be the same as it would be here in San Francisco. Wouldn't be the same, would it be in Atlanta, Georgia. So models here are very contextual. And so as you're thinking about analytics and big data, it's not about trying to find one Uber model that figures it all out. It really is asking the contextual questions. You know, what do we know about this? How do we look at it that can help us, help us utilize this information for business value? This is another real example that our friends in Cognos and SPSS did. We're for Memphis Police Department. And this happened because the head of the police department had some hunches. This is one of those, this isn't an IT conversation of, gee, we want an application based on this product and we needed to get these results. This person came in and said, sometimes we can look at the weather and know certain parts around Memphis are probably going to be higher crime areas. We're going to see some incidences. And, the part of, it was from a university, if there is recruitment day at a local university, there seemed to be certain areas of Memphis that had higher crime rates. So those insights are what drove this project to look at things that you wouldn't normally think about. You kind of put them together, 3-day weekends and others, but in this case for the Blue Crush project, it reduced crime by up to 25%. So it was not insignificant, but it also changes all the time. Again, that they have to look at this and it's not cast in stone. Maybe there's other variables that come up, maybe other things factor into this over time, maybe some of these things change. So what I want to do, ask Ben up from our JSTAR team. As I said, we like to do real live demos, and Ben's going to show you a piece of work on kind of the live applications to be able to look at streaming data and how a business might want to use that in the future.
Thanks, Rod.